everybody. We've been chatting for about 20 minutes already. It's all good. Welcome to today's Community Good Food Network event. Because we don't have too many people here today, I thought and we don't always do this if we've got lots of people, but I thought it might be actually nice if people could just say who they are and if they're here representing an organisation, what that organisation is. When we get to the discussion part of the session, obviously that's a bit more of an opportunity for you to, sort of talk about your interest in this particular issue. So if we can just do a brief round of introductions, that'd be great. And I'm not going to ask you to nominate each other because that foxes me every time I have to do that. I'm just going to go around my screen. So can we start with you, Ginny? Oh, I think she might have frozen.
Sorry, my sound just took, my sound took that opportunity to go doing. I knew it would. Yeah, I'm Ginny O'Farrell and I'm from Hexham Fresh Food Bank, which was set up last year.
Peter.
Oh no, everyone's frozen.
Hello. No, well, I hope I'm not frozen. I don't feel frozen. I'm Peter Sampson. I work for Durham Community Action and I have a job title called Food and Growing Coordinator, and so I'm one of the organisers of today's meeting.
Jill?
Yes, I'm representing St Paul's at Spennymoor, just sitting in and seeing what is available for us.
Lovely. Hilary?
Hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm not sure really I've got the answers to any of this, or indeed many of the questions that I don't quite, never quite know what the questions are, what to ask. But I've been involved in the food system for a very long time. So I'm a food scientist originally, back in the day, and I've worked for the food industry on and off all my life, and I still know quite a lot of people in the food industry, big and small. Talking of Frosties, but I used to work for Mr. Kipling Cakes. That's one of my sort of bigger employers. But I'm heavily involved in the food partnership, Hull Food Partnership in Hull. I've lived just outside Hull, but I set up Food for Hull back in 2012, which sort of morphed into a partnership with the City Council and also, which is obviously Sustainable Food Places project, and also we're hosted by, and that's why I'm going to talk about Rooted in Hull, we're hosted by the Urban Farm in Hull, called Rooted in Hull, which is a pretty unique prospect, and I'm actually on the board as well, but that's the link. We've got an MOU with the Food Partnership and Rooted, but they actually are our constituted company, we're not. So that was why the link, but I've known, anyway, yes, so I'll talk some more about it down the line.
Lovely, thank you. Bruce and is it Sarah? Do you want to say hello? I can't hear you. It doesn't seem to be muted though, so I don't know whether it's maybe an issue with your... Ah, yes, very quiet, but yes.
Need to slide your volume up.
Definitely.
I just a little twitch of a sound there, Sarah. So what we might do is just keep going, and hopefully hopefully we can come back to you. Wave something. Karen.
Hi everyone. I'm Karen Sport. I work for Durham County Council School Meals, and I'm the Catering Ops Manager.
Oh, Alan.
So I live in Shevin Village, just outside the city of Durham, now officially retired from paid work. So I've taken on a role to be a community planner for a new economy for the northeast of England, just a small job, around food. But I've decided to only focus on the water catchment of the River Wear. So it's called a bioregion. Yeah. So I'm a bioregional community planner using land use and how we use the land as the basis for a new economy. And the idea is to network with the other river systems that run from the North Pennines to the North Sea.
Fantastic, thank you. Abby, you're up. You're muted.
Thank you. I'm just scribbling away. That was quite an introduction, Alan. I'm Abby Thompson. I'm a colleague of Peter and Hannah's, and I'm on the management team at Durham Community Action.
And I didn't introduce myself. I'm Hannah. I'm one of the food and growing coordinators, along with Peter, at Durham Community Action. So today's session, it's the fourth of a series of network sessions, and we've been trying to focus on issues that seem to be coming out of the community food sort of sector, I guess, in County Durham. We've looked at emergency food during the early pandemic. That was our first one. That was obviously very much on people's minds early on. We've looked at issues around food waste and surplus food redistribution, and also climate friendly diets. We've done a session on that, thinking about, you know, sort of how we can nudge people towards those things. But a key issue that we think's come up, really, it's sort of come up in all of those sessions, which is around locally produced fresh fruit and veg. That, you know, you can see the rationale for that in terms of supporting people's health, supporting local jobs, and from a climate angle as well. But at the moment, I think there's quite a gap between emergency food provision and community growing, and also some of the other forms of sort of fruit and veg production that might be going on in the area. So, for example, Mick's not arrived yet, and we had apologies from Beth, but they were two people who would have been here today, who both work for community supported agriculture type projects, and do provide, you know, sort of sustainably grown fruit and veg to their local communities. But the business model around that does often rely on people who've got more money to spend on their food. And so what we're particularly interested in is this gap between some of our more disadvantaged communities and, you know, the growers who would like to be able to supply these people with fresh fruit and veg, and how we can sort of make that happen. So we're not, Hilary kind of referenced this, we don't have the answers to this either. I just want to make that clear right at the start. But this is really, I suppose it's about making a space where we can work out what some of the aspirations might be, what some of the challenges might be, and some of the opportunities. It's an issue that, you know, is common across the country. It's not specific to County Durham, but we need to find County Durham based sort of solutions to it if we can. So that's really a kind of a broad overview of what we're doing today. And to help us with that, we've got two speakers who are able to give us, I suppose, a particular perspective on some work in that area about, you know, getting fresh fruit and veg, locally produced fruit and veg to people who are perhaps experiencing food insecurity. So it's going to be really interesting to hear about some of their experiences and observations, really. And following that, we'll have a bit of an opportunity for everybody to chip in to a discussion about how that relates to what they're doing, because I'm aware that everybody probably in this meeting is, you know, coming from things from a slightly different perspective. So we try and relate it to where you are as well. So without further ado, can I ask Ginny to kick us off? Ginny's here from Hexham Fresh Food Bank, which is a really interesting project that's fairly recently grown up, I think. So yeah, I'll shut up and let Ginny start.
I need to share screen, don't I, somehow? Oh, there it is. Right. Oh, got it. Okay. Cool, and I can still see you on the side as well. Okay, give me a shout if I freeze or you can't hear me, because I'm being told that my internet connect able. So what is Hexham Fresh Food Bank? Where's the little thingy? There it is. Okay. So when, how, why did we begin? Last year at the beginning of the pandemic, I was seeing an awful lot of stuff in the people being furloughed, hours contracts, suddenly finding it incredibly difficult to feed themselves, and at the contributed some seeds to a lady who lives over in Humsworth. I asked her what she needed so many seeds for, and she said, well, we have a project over here, everybody grows one extra crop every year, and we sell to the community shop, and the proceeds go back into the village. And so I thought, well, how can that a step further? So I'm crops or surplus produce to us at the Fresh Food Bank, and then I was West Northumberland Food Bank to actually get it distributed. Were starting to experience food poverty and food insecurity. So we started a Facebook page. I had a friend who is really good at the whole techie side of things, and he helped me set up a page to encourage growers to pledge their produce. We had to work them whereby they would let me know what they were going to have available before, and then a local shop, Alison runs it, and she volunteered to become the drop-off point and the collection hub for the West Northumberland Food Bank. So last year it developed, it came literally from nothing to over the summer we were producing vast produce. So it was all stuff that was grown by volunteer growers, allotments or on their plots at home, and any surplus produce they had. Sometimes it was just a bag of peas, sometimes it was 40 leeks. So we really, it relatively varied. And as the season went on, we had volunteer growers for Corbridge as well, none of whom were on Facebook because they were all in their 80s. But still had their little patch of ground and wanted to contribute. So we set up a separate collection point. As time went on, volunteers started to ask me whether they could contribute various products, like rhubarb. And I said, well, unfortunately, rhubarb sort of quite prohibitive for people in food poverty because of the amount of sugar that they need to cook it with. We started to actually turn our produce into crumbles, pies, soups, supplement the fresh produce. So as you can see there, we've got like little bird's eye chilies, so really, really tiny little packets, cooked food and everything in between as well. Then in the summer things really took off, and I had an absolutely insane couple of weeks on and asked me about the growth of the food bank, an article about community food projects that had started in response to the pandemic, and we were the second big story on there, so that was lovely. North then phoned me and said, hello, would you like to be on TV? And I said, okay. So we had a lovely little on North initially, and then the following day it made it onto the morning and lunchtime national news as well. On the back of that, the story and the Northumberland Food Partnership, and then I also had other community groups, you know, running community gardens, community allotments, getting in touch with me to ask whether we might actually start coming together as a unit to increase the amount of produce we could contribute. So had some obstacles and delays. So after last summer, I was riding high and feeling this is such a great thing, it's really amazing and it's working so well. And of course, at the moment, we don't have any funding. and we're very much reliant on the goodwill of volunteers. So it depends very much on who actually gets involved, whether they're willing to pledge their crops, how much produce they're willing to contribute, and so forth. Crops are unpredictable, and that has been one of our biggest problems, because we can't actually tell an outlet for sure when or how much is going to be ready for them. Then that obviously causes some problems. It was the West Northumberland Food Bank were struggling with that a bit. We had issues with packaging, labelling and storage of the cooked produce. So finding recyclable and recycled packaging was a big thing. We had to label it very, very carefully in terms of allergies and how long any cooked produce would actually last for. And then there was the issue of actually storing any cooked produce. West Northumberland Food Bank have one chest freezer, and they could keep a limited amount there, but obviously not as much as we could produce. So winter we had to put things on hold. We weren't actually able to continue producing cooked produce over the winter. And in May this year, they told me that regretfully they wouldn't be able to take any further contributions. They needed a steady stream of knowing what they were going to get, which obviously we're not really able to provide. So it was time to look at out. So we've developed quite a lot this year again. Undeterred, I was contacted by really lovely lady called from the Royal Horticultural Society outreach programme, and she was interested in the project, said it's exactly the kind of thing that the RHS are interested in, and would we like some packets of seeds and some compost and some seed trays that we could distribute to grow. So we held a stall in Hexham Farmers Market back in May, or we distributed seed packs. Other people brought along spare seedlings. In the picture there you can see like people have brought tomato plants and cabbages, and so we parcelled the packs. Initially they were to pick up, but we found that we're not a lot of people who were experiencing food poverty who said, I'd really like to have a go with my children's food. So we were able to keep them out as well, which is something I'd very like to develop and continue. In terms of distribution, we've made contact now with Hex Grocery, which is a scheme whereby you buy a card for a year's membership, and then you get 2 shops per week that you can go in and put things in your basket, and then you take them off home. So they're very happy to take our fresh produce. And Number 20 Community Project is less affluent area of Hexham as well. So we will now be able to, instead of covering the whole of West Northumberland, we're making it accessible to the people of Hexham, which is pretty much where we're based anyway. So this is one of the seed packs that RHS put together for us. So we're still going forward. What we want to do is we want to seed packs and seedlings, extend our support from the RHS to get more people in the community involved in growing for us. I have a series of community grants that I can apply for, and I'm looking with Tesco, National Lottery. The Northumberland County Council also has the community test apply for. So I'm also hearing about various options for not-for-profits, charities, so that we can actually have a skeleton staff that food back, because at the moment it takes up quite a lot of time and I'm not getting paid, which obviously on one level I don't mind at all, but on the other hand, you know, there's bills. So it would be nice as well to have it just more stable by having that status, because then of course, you know, the number of grants that we can apply for would increase as well, and it would make it a much more secure step for the future. I'm also trying to find some land where we can establish some more sustained growing, and with the funding then we'd aim at polytunnel so that we can grow more produce and keep it protected, and thereby kind of make the predictability of it a little better. You know, we'll know that we're not going to have all our crop of tomatoes fail or whatever. And yes, kitchen space would be lovely so that we can actually, you know, freeze our produce and then use it over the winter as well. So that's where we are at the moment. And if anybody's interested, then please do come and have a look at us on Facebook groups, Hexham Fresh Food Bank, and my email address is there as well. Does anybody want to ask anything?
Well, Ginny, would it be all right if we, just for now, we'll hold that. If people do have questions, you are very welcome to ask them, but we're going to do that after we've heard from Hilary as well. So that's okay.
Cool.
But thank you. It's really nice to hear what you're doing, and it's just such an interesting approach to sort of emergency food provision in the sense of giving people tools to perhaps build their resilience around food, as well as obviously some food to eat there and then as well. So it's great, and good luck with with the future developments. It sounds exciting. Okay, I'm just going to hand over to Hilary, who's here from, as you said, rooted in Hull, and also is a member of Hull Food Partnership, and they've got a different sort of an approach. So off you go, Hilary.
Thank you. Well, actually, yes, Hannah, but some of it is quite similar. It's very interesting. Thank you, Ginny. Very interesting to hear that. Let me see if I can get my computer to work. Here we go. It takes a while to warm up. Forgive me if this is taking a long time. Oh, please work. Share. Oh, hang on. Sorry. Right. From the start. Can you see? Can people see my slides?
It says that you've started, but I can't see the slide.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. It's there now.
Great. From the beginning. It's taking a long time to unwind. I can see, right, okay. Where to start? The first thing I wanted to say was Hexham. I've been to Hexham, a beautiful place. Very well, on the borders, rural, you know, I feel it's probably quite a different environment from Hull, which is a pretty gritty industrial, you know, northeastern city. We have a certain amount in common with Middlesbrough in the way that our history comes by. So I'm interested in the issues around fresh food and bringing it to people for them to eat. I mean, I wasn't involved at the start, but my close friend Adrian Fisher, who was the founding director, started it. Everybody knows Hull is probably, are you getting a full slide, or are you just getting the
we can see the whole thing, as in,
oh, I was trying to get the start slideshow, but sorry,
no, okay.
Slideshow.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
It's just, I just want that first, this one full slide without the can't this, there we are. Is that okay? That's better.
Yeah, that's the one.
Good. Okay, lovely. Rooted was the baby of Adrian Fisher, who is the founding director, about 10 years ago, and it came from, it's been very small and very quiet until really the last 2 or 3 years. As everyone will know, Hull is, as I said, a gritty northeastern city with a decline in our old industrial base, including obviously the fishing industry, and that's a sort of typical street in just across the river sort of thing, divided in fact by the River Hull, which is a tidal river. Obviously the Humber is the estuary. So we oh no, it's gone blank. Come on. That's why. I've had that for a while. That's actually a 2010 headline. We have just, the Hull City Council of Public Health have actually just been given a lot of money to do tier 1 and tier 2 work on obesity. So we know, all of us here, I'm sure, that there is a big link between poverty and deprivation and obesity. And we all know that poor food is one of very many complex reasons why children get overweight while adults get overweight. And of course, children grow to become adults, and often they take their weight battles with them, sadly. But Rooted, going back to Rooted, this was the sort of concept. It was going to be a stacks of steel containers, that's slightly futuristic, and that's how that was the original planning application that was submitted. The Hull City Council, bless their cotton socks, did agree to it, which I think shows quite a lot of vision or courage from someone on the council. Mick Marsden does know about this. He will say he was involved with the initial steps of Rooted. Sorry, it's not here, but that's right from the start. This was probably 8 or 9 years ago. You can see the start of the steel containers set out in this round circle shape on a really pretty industrial site. It's a meanwhile site, which apparently means that the owners, who are Humber Wedge, they galvanize steel, who are next door, they own the site and they can kick us off at any time. But bless them, they haven't yet. But they're obviously a huge supporter. These are just, I've got plenty of slides, pretty pictures for you to look at, because I get very boring sometimes and I can see people's eyes glaze over, so at least I can give you the pictures to look at. Rainwater tanks, of course, rainwater storage is on the right. Those are the white tanks. Those are the original white tanks. We're collecting massive amounts of water off the Royal Mail sorting office, which is next door, huge roof. The white tanks have been replaced with black tanks, because of course, if they were white, they were started to grow algae inside them. So for a while, we painted them black, and then we've actually replaced them with black tanks. We've been funded by a variety, talking of funding, Ginny, we've been funded by a variety of people, most recently, which is now running out, the lottery, and Esme Fairbairn, and also the Two Ridings Foundation, which is based in York. Anyway, I'll come to that in a minute. These on the left, these empty blue tanks are actually our reed bed recycling tanks, which recycle all the grey water, which comes out of our cafe steel container. And of course, as we've all been talking about, isn't this what it's all about, producing fresh veg? We don't do much fruit, but fresh veg. And that's Adrian in the middle. He's the hero. And these obviously are Hobson and Porter, are a huge supporter, a Hull building contractor. They've been supportive from day one. And I'm sorry, I don't know him, but he's another. The industry has been a great supporter of Rooted. They've obviously seen that they can do stuff here. And one of the things I want to say, and I've come to the end, when I come to the end of this, is it's a lot of this is about people and relationship building. And because Adrian's been around a while, if excuse the expression, and is actually from farming background, people he has several relationships already built up, and I think we sometimes forget that at our peril. Relationship building and timing is important. So now we've taken a step into the 21st century with sustainable transport. This is an electric bike, and it's got panniers on it. Actually, if you look closely, that's our Veg City logo there. But we now, any veg boxes we do, and I'll come to that in a minute, we don't do a huge amount, get delivered using sustainable transport, i.e. the electric bike. And off Martin, who's one of the workforce on the site, he trots off and delivers locally, and it's a great bike. And he also goes and picks up stuff and things. So we try to innovate, and we try to be sustainable. You can just see in the background, that's the tiny bit there, the blue tank, that's part of the reed bed, the start of the reed bed water recycling, water cleaning, purification. So lots of pretty pictures. We have developed a farm shop, which is here and here and here, and selling fruit and vegetables. We have a cafe that does soup there. We grow nice things. We grow a lot of tomatoes at this time of the year. So it's here, and of course, it's about the people. So we have, the days are quite quite structured in a week. We have volunteers, we have community groups that are funded by, say, the Crime Commissioning Service. We have a women's group. We have various other groups that come and just come and stay on the site. They don't have to do anything, but they can garden if they wish. No one is an expert. It's open to anyone, and we have a lot of obviously people walking off the street. And I'll come to that in a second about mental health and well-being. But my view is, and I'll talk as these flick through, is that we're not going to produce enough to feed the city. We really aren't. We all know how difficult it is to grow vegetables. And Ginny, you touched on the inconsistency and the seasons. And I say to people, you know, do you really understand just how difficult it is to grow lots and lots of vegetables to feed all of us, and fruit, in a climate like ours, which has this inconsistency, and this you can't plan. Look at the rain we just had recently. This is meant to be July. It's been monsoon here for a bit, but we've had this terribly dry spring. You know, they're all saying we're not going to get was it apples? I can't remember, one of the crops, because of the very cold spring. And I've spoken to farmers all over the county who have been struggling with flooded parts of their pasture, and you know, resowing crops for the second and third time. But we don't all grow. We don't grow all of the herbs and vegetables. We do a lot in our polytunnels, which we do have, but we also buy them from Myers Beck, which is a community-orientated nursery out in North Cave, which is actually west of the city. And Martin goes off once or every now and then and gets lots of these herbs and other vegetable plants that have been grown, especially. But these, of course, were ours in a bag. Was that the photo you liked, Hannah? The wheelbarrow. Yeah. But we've since developed, coming on from that overhead picture. You know, here are our beautiful steel containers. There was a planning restriction on what sort of colour they were, so that's why they're white. We do actually have one red one, which is the art container, which is marvellous, and we were allowed that too under the planning. But this is our billboard sign that goes up. We have BioD, which is a whole company providing our things like washing up liquid and detergent things. So we have a small farm shop, and it's not dyed-in-the-wool organic, but it's local as we can possibly make it. Now, there aren't that many, indeed, if any, growers in Hull, but there is a growers network of people that get together, and we do have some people who really do go and grow veg in council-owned land or earth. Now, what is really interesting is that a lot of people talk about it, growing and wanting to do stuff, and this is outside Rooted, who does do stuff, as you can see, but there's a lot of people who get terribly excited about it, and then you actually ask them to turn up with a spade and suddenly they sort of seem to disappear. So unless you're passionate about growing, it really means something to you, unless you have an allotment or you really understand how to grow. You know, you're not going to change the way people in Hull grow food for themselves. But at Rooted, we say, if you come and one or two people might buy a herb for the first time. They might buy a little bit. These are our little wooden planters. We've often sent home with families a little wooden planter and the soil and a few plants and seeds, yes, but mostly seedlings. And just that very act of growing something, you know, changes lives and changes mindsets, and the children get involved, just as Ginny was saying. But we found that the growers network, which we know and network well with, because that's what we do as a partnership, as a food partnership, talk about it a lot. They campaign a lot. They're great activists. They take stands outside Hull City Council, but they don't actually get their hands dirty. And perhaps I'm being a bit rude, but it's quite noticeable that some people like to talk about it and some people really like to do it. And the ones that really like to do it don't talk about it a lot. And so I've found that although the Time Bank, Hull and East Riding, who are quite a vocal organisation in the city, and we know them well, have had over the last sort of 5 years, about 3 years, when they've done a sort of feastival that once a year, a big open event, using cooking produce from allotments, donated from allotments and wholesalers, and also from Fairshare, to provide, I think they gave the last one, they gave away something like 150 bowls of soup and bread, that sort of thing. But it's not easy to find people who really want to give you the food, prepared to give it. And like Ginny said, who's going to be the hub? And how is environmental health, how does that sit with environmental health, who get very interested when we talk about handling food and passing it on to other people. And yes, cooked food's an absolute nightmare, isn't it, Ginny? We've got someone called Jan Boyd in Environmental Management Solutions in East Hull, who has a funding to do ready meals, and we have a proper kitchen in a community centre. They send their chefs in on a Friday and a Saturday, and they do a ready meals for 4, and I think they charge £2.50, and they go into the community fridges. They're usually sold out within probably about 6 hours, but they have on Facebook, and it goes up every week as to what they're doing. We also have a great deal of input from Cranswick, who are of course meat company, but give us a lot of meat, and that is very popular. And it's been very interesting to see that work. That's cooked food, but we do know that that's in a project with chefs, with kitchens. It's all been approved and by environmental health, and there's not a problem. But for us to do that here at Rooted, it would be very difficult. We do have a cafe. We run a cafe, and we have soups and bread and occasional the bacon and egg sandwiches, that sort of thing in the morning. We've had morning meetings in the outside because we have a large space. And we've had people come and sit outside, especially in this last year, because they felt safe. The other thing, I'm slightly ambivalent about it, which is wonderful to see. As a place, it is actually a sanctuary, and it is a safe place, and that has been hugely welcomed in this last year. And people have come to it with with very different ideas and agendas and needs. And we like to think that we don't only just provide vegetables, and we do provide vegetables, not a great deal, but we do. But we really provide safety and sanctuary and welcome and acceptance that anybody can come onto the site, and it's and meet other people. So I'm rather fond of this slide, because you've probably seen it yourselves. It did the rounds, I think, last year, but I've slightly adapted. But one of these things around empowering people to feel better about themselves, and I'm coming on to mental health and wellbeing, is growing. And actually growing a tomato is quite difficult, because it's never warm enough, or it's either too warm or too hot, and they need feeding, and and then they get blossom and rot, and then they get incomplete pollination, and etc. It's always a nightmare. But growing anything, herbs or watercress, or makes a difference. Really makes you feel it's possible to do anything. So really to conclude, and I felt. This is really a sort of summary, and it doesn't really answer any of the questions about supply chains, but I'm going to come on to that. But we all know food is about people, place, and moment. The key element for me is about access, and I mean being able to access it, to buy it if you can, and you may not be able to, being able to access it if you can walk there or not, as the case may be in the last years. We found out so many couldn't. So where is it, the food? And in a city, where is it? And what is it? Where does it come from? You obviously need the skill to be able to deal with it. I've got I know someone quite well, a young person who's passionate about food, and she got her very first veg box quite recently, and she was thrilled to bits with it. But there were some vegetables in that veg box she had not come across before. So it's about knowledge, isn't it? About it. Well, obviously we all know about education, but I also feel very strongly that it's about community, and at Rooted, we're more about the community, about what we can offer people who walk in. It's about pleasure, because isn't that what food is all about? And cultural appropriateness, and also but culture in itself as to how we eat, who we eat with, how we share and enjoy food together. The adage, as you've had at one of your earlier talks, Hannah, we all know it's about health, but it's about the soil, the environment, and the people's health, as we know from the National Food Strategy today. And I also, that this light bulb, of course, is about innovation and change. Now, Rooted isn't really, an innovation. It's pretty unique. There aren't many places, in fact, there are none really that I know of that are quite like Rooted. Adrian travelled extensively before he set it up. He went over to America. He went to, I think, looked at the stuff happening in London, and of course there's all the stuff happening in Vancouver and all the places we know. But it's what can we do to expand people's knowledge and confidence around food. If we can change people, the way they think about food and how they might approach it or how they can access it, I think that then becomes innovative in its own way. We have other innovations on the site. These days we have a waterless toilet, so you don't need any water at all, which has been sort of built from the ground up. It's just a little bit like a TARDIS. It's a German design. It's quite remarkable. Sorry, that's my phone. And also we have
Hilary.
Yeah. So yeah.
Apologies, I'm just conscious that we need a little bit of time.
So yes, that's it. Sorry.
Is that all right?
Yes, fine. But anyway, there you are. So please ask questions.
Thank you so much. I see what you're saying about those similarities, because there's a real similarity at the heart of what you do and the heart of what Ginny's doing. The core concept is very much the same, isn't it? But the scale is very different. And I think it's been really nice to show some difference in scale and of approach. I'm just going to, I don't know whether anybody's got any particular thoughts, or it doesn't have to be questions, observations, as anything that's sort of resonated with you around what you've heard today. Alan.
Thank you to both speakers. So just a quick observation, because I didn't in the kind of general intro explain that I do have like 10 years plus experience of community supported agriculture and urban food growing schemes and so on. And I did spend a year after I left North Cumbria working with all of the food partnerships in the city of Lancaster, and many of them are still ongoing. And so there are other projects which we can tap into, but the big question here, and this is kind of the link between the two, is ask yourself the question, what's the purpose of the project? The primary purpose of the project. And if the primary purpose is about health and well-being, addressing the mental health agenda, that's the purpose. It's not about producing fruit and veg, fresh fruit and veg seasonally for however big that geography is. The primary purpose is around using a tool which happens to be food growing. If it's about producing a regular supply of fresh fruit and veg, and it has as a byproduct improving health and well-being, let's be clear about that. So the challenge is when a project falls between two purposes, and it's quite hard then to work out the pathway by which you can scale up from a volunteer-led project to, let's just call it a transitional project, where an income is required, whether that's from funding or sales or a mixture of the two. So I'll shut up from there, because I've got lots of observations, but we don't have time.
I think that's a really good observation, that actually a lot of the time community growing is trying to do loads of different things at the same time, because they all need doing, and the people in those communities need those things. But you're right, in terms of actual food production, that's possibly a side issue which we can explore in more depth, some of those other models as well. Peter?
I mean, I think it's a really good question, or a really good observation, and I would be interested to hear from Hilary how the, if at all, but if so, how the objectives of Rooted have changed over those 10 years, because I could imagine that you find your objective as you go along almost.
Yes, Peter, yeah, extremely, very personal point. It changes and has changed quite significantly in terms of the outward appearance, but Adrian has always wanted it to be a demonstration for the community, not to produce vast amounts of food for anybody, but it's for the community and to act as a place that the community can come to. He loves the innovating around solar pumps, water pumps for his watering, the rainwater capture, the waterless loo, the bike, all that's the innovation, and we're getting honey bees and we've got polytunnels, all those, that's the little innovative things that he's put in and made work to demonstrate that you can do it on an open air site. That's sort of what he loves doing. The stuff around making a difference to very vulnerable people who've had their lives turned around by being part of Rooted, and the chap now who's the chef that runs the cafe has, I would think, been pretty had his life hugely enhanced by being part of Rooted as a community. So for us, although outwardly it looks a different place with the, whatever it is, 70 odd raised beds we've got and the polytunnels and the new containers, it is always at its heart been about a community space, and I think will always continue to be. There are obviously lots of things doing, and just as Alan said around food growing, yes, it's not an aside, but it's actually for the community and by the community and with the community. So feeding people is almost an add-on. But is it about education? Is it about exposure? Is it about socialization? I don't know.
Does anybody else want to offer any other perspectives on that? I know we've got people from all walks of life in the room. Hi, Jenny.
Hi everybody. Sorry, I missed the beginning. I was having trouble logging in, so apologies. I'm Jenny Connor from Daltonmoor Farm, which is a vegan fruit farm in Daltonley Dale, Seaham in County Durham, and also the School of Sustainable Living and Wellbeing. And our ethos is about empowering people through knowledge and experience to become more independent and confident and self-reliant. And part of that is about food and feeding themselves, and part of it is about living lightly on the planet and more sustainably. And so it's been lovely to hear from Ginny and Hilary about your projects. I think they're brilliant and well done. And yes, and thank you for Alan pointing out the importance of being clear about your central aim. And I think that's a timely reminder for me as well, because there are many. You start out with an aim, and then there's lots and lots of byproduct effects which are beneficial, and you can too easily get sidetracked by those and think, oh, it'd be nice to do that, and it'd be nice to do that as well. But of course, you can't, as an individual, do everything. But I see similarities of ethos and drive in both of the projects presented, and my own goals here. But rather than focusing particularly on growing food for our visitors who we want to engage with nature and healthier living and food. The focus mainly is on foraging for food, and I think this is a hugely untapped resource, particularly in terms of food poverty. And I've tried to make some initial contact with Durham Council about perhaps not spraying everything with pesticide, because dandelions and nettles are so nutritious and abundant, and if only communities knew how to source them and prepare them, they could have lots and lots of free, very nutritious food every day of the week, but not if the council's going to spray them with Roundup or something. So really, as a sort of a, not quite on the site here, but as an offshoot to what we're doing on site at the farm, I really want to try and engage people out there in councils and community to get some champions perhaps to take forward this idea of foraging for food in the community, because, you know, weeds grow everywhere. They don't have to be in the countryside. They're very good at growing around human disturbance. That's their forte, in fact, and they're very good at pulling up loads of nutrients out of the depths of the soil. And they're far more nutritious than the stuff you buy in the supermarket, and even indeed more nutritious than the things that you cultivate and grow, because they have far deeper roots and they're much more optimized for their surroundings. So that's just a slightly different angle on what the two presenters have said today. Is it's not just about the food, it's about the empowerment, the knowledge, the confidence, and the mental well-being as well, and the social aspect, because when I take a group of walkers out to forage and learn about all the free foods that they didn't know they were walking past all their lives, they're full of wonderment and awe, and they all go home pals at the end of it. So they've made new friends, they've made new contacts. We set them up with a group on Facebook and they can share ideas. So it's quite early stages yet, because we were going to launch last April and so that didn't quite happen. So we're just really getting started since this April. So we've got a long way to go in terms of development, but full of ideas for the future. It's great to see this group here. I'm absolutely gobsmacked when I found this group. I thought, gosh, somebody else is thinking about healthy food. Brilliant.
I'm interested to hear a bit more about that, Jenny. How are you connecting with your potential customers?
Well, at the moment, we're just running the commercial side, and it's just we've got a recently set up website, and we've got a Facebook page which has been going for a while, and we go out to markets and sell our own wares, because obviously I make apple juice and vinegar and cider and preserves, so we take those out and sell, and so it's quite early days for us yet, but I've been trying to ponder, and we've got some schools, some educational groups interested. The Forest School is going to start coming from September. We've got a few schools have expressed an interest but don't really know where to start for themselves, and of course their stumbling block is they don't have funding. So I'm just pondering trying to set up some sort of charitable organisation or thing that runs alongside the commercial aspect of the business, so that people who can afford to come and pay to go foraging, then they can pay to go foraging. People who can pay to do basket weaving can do that, but I would ideally like to be able to provide the same facilities to all ages of education, and people in the community who aren't able to afford to come and pay the commercial going rate to learn how to weave a basket, for example. So I'm just in the stages, very early stages of finding out about how to set up a charity, basically, to run alongside it, because as a commercial organisation, I have no access to funding for that, really.
Jenny, lovely to hear you. I'm too, like Peter, I'm interested, but I'm just in passing. One of those suppliers that brings little pots of pesto into the rooted farm shop does it with nettles and nasturtiums.
Excellent.
And she's from the city itself. I don't know who it is, but I personally don't know her, but Martin knows her. But she makes wonderful pestos with these quite unusual ingredients.
Yeah, oh, there's so much out there that we can
I think so, but it's quite a big jump. Or my only hesitation would be it was quite a big jump from someone who's unfamiliar with the fresher food anyway, to then say, oh yes, look, nettles, that's, a lot of people don't even know what a nettle is. Forgive me, but I mean,
well,
in the city.
On the other hand, you know, some of these people have never met a broccoli either. And
yeah,
so,
well, exactly. Yes,
so,
exactly.
You know, a nettle and a broccoli are just as alien, so why not start with a nettle?
Yes.
Or a dandelion, which is a little bit less challenging because it doesn't sting you back.
Quite right too.
It's a really good, I mean, I'm really pleased that you made that point about the council. You know, some of our, obviously sort of thinking about things from a climate angle, I've often, you know, within communities, if we can reduce the amount of wildflowers and so-called weeds that get sprayed, it's brilliant for insects and pollinators and everything else. I hadn't really thought about it in relation to foraging, so that's a brilliant point to have made. Thanks, Jenny. Oh, hi, Alan. Do speak.
So I know that Hexham has an incredible edible, but I don't know if Hull has an incredible edible.
No, Alan, we don't. But we have a very obliging council. I mean, that's our growers network. Actually, we have a very obliging council. We can grow on any bits of council land if we have people who want to, and we have quite a lot of very interesting cultural groups that do, and grow some fantastic stuff and come and celebrate it, root it and cook it there and then. But we don't need an incredible edible because we have our growers network. It's just that we don't have enough people in the growers network who actually want to grow.
Yeah. I guess the point I'm making, again, it's like knowing lots of bits of information from lots of different places. So today we've had Hexham and Hull who've been presenting, and clearly in your part of Yorkshire, there are quite a significant number of communities, not in Hull itself, but who are involved in local food growing schemes, which
Yes.
have grown out of incredible edibles. So I guess what I'm saying here, the key words, because I've got loads of notes I've written about both of you, and I'll share those things. But for me, it's networks of networks, and I know that's what Durham Community Action is about. That's what this network is about. And because I network with people in Northumberland and Yorkshire and Lancashire and Cumbria, that's why I was asking right at the beginning, Hannah, about sharing. You know, so it's recorded and it's in a way that can be then shared. Then we didn't get Hilary's contact details, although I've got Ginny's. So is there a contact email for Hilary?
I didn't put it on my slides.
I'm very happy to send that round in the notes. That's not a problem at all, if that's all right with you, Hilary.
That's fine. Sorry, I usually put it on my, I missed it off. Yeah, absolutely fine, absolutely fine. Alan, while you're on, do you know Adrian Lovett in York? Because what you said about rivers was very interesting, because he's a river man and he wants to, we've been trying for some years unsuccessfully to build a Yorkshire regional local food network. And I also belong to the East Riding Local Food Network, which was set up some years ago, which is now merged with the East Riding County Council Tourist Department. But that has local food producers all over East Riding. And I've wanted to use them to feed Hull without, I have to say, much success. But yeah. Adrian Lovett is in York. Do you know him?
Yes.
Oh, right, yes. And he loves to talk about the rivers and the Yorkshire links. So I was really interested to hear you say that.
Right. If that's okay with everybody, I think we've just about hit 4 o'clock. Seems like a sensible place to bring things to a close. I'd just like to say thank you very much to Ginny and Hilary for contributing your experiences. It's massively valuable to us to hear from people all around the country. And thank you everybody else who's come along and taken part in the session, because that makes it, it's this sense of community around food and growing that we're wanting to try and achieve with this network. So we think we know the next session is going to be on the 11th of September. And we are thinking that it might be interesting to explore a bit more in depth around the community supported agriculture model that's been mentioned. Not everybody might be familiar with that. I'm certainly no expert myself, but it's been mentioned a few times in our sessions, and I think in a way it might be the other part to some of the questions that we were posing at the start of this session, which were around more about food supply. So I think what sounds like what we've kind of established today is that actually what many community-based growing projects are trying to achieve isn't actually around food supply necessarily as its primary purpose, as I think was a good way of putting it, Alan. And there is still that, you know, there's a need for that. There's a need for a patchwork of different approaches to try and get to grips with the gaps in our food system, I guess. So we'll perhaps look at a slightly more commercial approach in a future session. So yeah, but thank you, thanks, Alan.
I was just going to say that so the work that we did over the last decade was around looking at a different model to the community supported agriculture model. And it was switching the letters around, and it was like, what did an agriculture supported community look like? So I'd definitely be interested in contributing through you, Peter, Abby, and whoever else, because I obviously I know that there'll be a question around the Gibbside community supported agriculture model, for example, which came out of ideas when I was a volunteer ranger at Gibbside, working with Mick Wilkes. And that was about whether or not, if the land was gifted to the community, was there going to be an unmet need? Because there's that whole question, and Hilary definitely picked up on that in Hull, that like, and Ginnie in Hexham, if the land is there and the community want to grow food, is there a way of bringing the two together? But if the community want to grow food and there isn't the land, then what are the mechanisms by which you can do that? So again, it's about identifying unmet needs and what are the barriers to that? Because you said that, aspirations, challenges and opportunities. I think they're three excellent words to kind of focus on any presentation.
Right, well, thank you very much. It's really nice to have seen you all. I hope everybody has a brilliant summer, and yeah, we'll hopefully see you again in September.
Lovely to meet everyone. Anybody can do it. When next time you're in Hull, come and see Rooted.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
Bye.
Bye.